The blood pooled thick and dark beneath the stranger's body, soaking into the Wyoming dust like a terrible promise. And Fiona Prescott knew she had maybe minutes to save him before he bled out completely on the trail just outside Cheyenne in the autumn of 1878. She had been 16 then, riding back from delivering eggs to the McAllister Ranch when she heard the gunshots echoing across the prairie. Her father had always warned her about minding her own business in this wild territory, but something drew her toward the sound instead of away from it. Perhaps it was the recklessness of youth, or perhaps it was fate. When she crested the small rise, she saw him lying face down beside his fallen horse, 3 men on horseback riding away at a gallop, their laughter carrying on the wind like poison. Fiona should have ridden for help. That would have been the sensible thing to do. Instead, she urged her mare forward, her heart hammering against her ribs as she approached the fallen man. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair matted with blood and dirt. A bullet had torn through his side, just below his ribs, and another had grazed his shoulder. His horse had been shot too, the poor animal already gone. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pulled off her shawl and pressed it against the worst of the wounds. His eyes fluttered open briefly, glazed with pain and confusion. They were the most striking green she had ever seen, even clouded as they were. He tried to speak, but only blood bubbled at his lips. "Do not talk," she whispered urgently. "Save your strength." Getting him onto her horse was nearly impossible. He was dead weight, muscular and tall, and she was just a slip of a girl. But fear and determination made her strong. She managed to drape him across her mare's withers, then mounted behind him, holding him steady with one arm while she guided the horse with the other. She did not take him to town. Those men might come back, might finish what they started. Instead, she took him to the old line shack on the eastern edge of her father's property, a place nobody used anymore. For 3 days, she tended him in secret. She cleaned his wounds with whiskey and stitched them with thread from her sewing kit, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. She brought him water, broth, and whatever food she could steal from her mother's kitchen without raising suspicion. Fever took him on the 2nd night, and she sat beside him, cooling his burning skin with damp cloths, whispering prayers she half remembered from childhood. On the 4th morning his fever broke. His eyes opened, clear and aware, and he looked at her with an expression of wonder and confusion. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough as gravel. She hesitated. Something told her not to give him her name, not to tie herself to this moment in any way that could be traced. "Just someone passing by," she said softly. "You were ambushed, shot. Do you remember?" His jaw tightened. "Porter. 3 men who worked for Harrison Porter. I was going to testify against him in Cheyenne. Cattle rustling operation. You need to leave this territory," Fiona said firmly. "As soon as you can ride. Those men think you are dead, but if they find out otherwise, you saved my life." His green eyes held hers, intense and searching. "I do not even know your name." "You do not need to know it," she replied, standing up and brushing off her skirt. "I brought you some food and fresh bandages. There is a horse in the lean-to outside, nothing fancy, but she will carry you. When you are strong enough, ride north. Start over somewhere new. I cannot just leave. I have to make Porter pay for what he did." "You have to live," Fiona countered. "Dead men do not get justice. Live first. Everything else can come later." She left before he could argue further, before he could ask more questions, before she could tell him that his smile, even weak with pain, made her heart do strange things in her chest. She was 16 and he was a stranger, and this was not some fairy story where the maiden and the wounded knight rode off into the sunset together. She checked on him once more, late that night. He was sleeping, his breathing steady and strong. She left extra supplies and a note with simple words, "Go north. Live well." Then she slipped away into the darkness and forced herself not to look back. 2 days later, the line shack was empty. He had taken her advice, vanished like morning mist. Fiona told herself it was better this way, that she would forget about the stranger with the green eyes and the grateful smile. She told herself this for weeks, for months, for years. She never quite managed to believe it. 5 years passed like water through fingers. Fiona grew from a girl into a woman, helped her father manage their ranch after her mother passed from pneumonia, and learned to shoot straight enough to discourage the occasional drifter who thought a woman alone was easy prey. The railroad came through, bringing new people and new opportunities. Cheyenne grew, sprawled, became something more than just another dusty cattle town. Fiona had suitors, of course. She was pretty in an understated way, with honey-colored hair and warm brown eyes, and she could manage a ranch better than most men. But none of them made her heart race. None of them had green eyes that haunted her dreams. Her father died in the spring of 1883, thrown from a spooked horse and landed wrong. The grief was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, Fiona was alone on a ranch that was too much for one person, with debts she had not known existed, and neighbors who eyed her property with barely concealed interest. She managed for a year, selling off cattle, letting go of hired help she could no longer afford, working herself to the bone from sunup to sundown. But it was not enough. By the summer of 1884, she knew she had to make a choice: sell the ranch or lose it entirely. That was when she heard about the opportunities in Idaho. The railroad was pushing through, new towns were springing up, and land was available for those brave enough or desperate enough to try. Malad City, they said, was a good place for a fresh start. Small but growing, with honest people trying to build something real. Fiona sold what remained of the Wyoming ranch, packed what she could carry, and bought a ticket west. She was 22 years old and starting over with nothing but grit and determination. If she felt a small pang of regret leaving Wyoming, leaving the place where she had once saved a stranger's life, she told herself it was just nostalgia, nothing more. Malad City in 1884 was rough and raw, a collection of wooden buildings huddled together as if for protection against the vast Idaho wilderness. The summers were hot and dry, the winters bitter cold, and the people were a mixture of Mormon settlers, miners, cattlemen, and dreamers. Fiona used what money she had to buy a small property on the edge of town with a sturdy cabin and enough land for a kitchen garden and a few chickens. It was not much, but it was hers. She found work at the general store, keeping accounts and helping customers. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was a shrewd Chinese woman who had come east from California and had no patience for fools or bigotry. She and Fiona got along like a house on fire. "You got a good head for numbers," Mrs. Chen said approvingly after Fiona's first week. "And you do not gossip. That is rare in a town this size." Fiona smiled. "I prefer to mind my own business, smart girl. You will do well here." The town had a sheriff, a young man named Tom Barker who was better at breaking up bar fights than solving actual crimes, and a mayor who spent most of his time worrying about railroad negotiations. There was a church, 2 saloons, a hotel, a blacksmith, and a doctor who drank too much but could still set a bone straight when needed. Life settled into a rhythm. Fiona worked at the store, tended her garden, and slowly built a new life. She made a few friends, attended church socials when she could not avoid them, and politely declined the marriage proposals that came her way. There was Daniel Warren, who owned the livery, and Patrick Sullivan, who had a mining claim that might actually be worth something. Both were decent men, but neither made her pulse quicken. "You are too particular," Mrs. Chen told her one afternoon. "No man is perfect." "I am not looking for perfect," Fiona replied, sorting through a shipment of canned goods. "I am looking for—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. What was she looking for? Someone who made her feel the way she had felt that day 5 years ago, kneeling beside a bleeding stranger and willing him to live. That was foolish. That had been fear and adrenaline, nothing more. But sometimes, late at night, she still dreamed of green eyes. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September when everything changed. Fiona was in the store, helping Mrs. Chen inventory the fabric shipment when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up automatically, ready with her customer service smile. The man who walked in was tall and lean, with dark hair and the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. He wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt slung low on his hips, and he moved with the careful awareness of someone used to trouble. Fiona's heart stopped. 5 years had changed him. He was broader in the shoulders, harder in the face, with lines around his eyes that spoke of sun and struggle. But those eyes were the same vivid green she remembered, the same eyes that had looked at her with confusion and gratitude in that old line shack. He did not recognize her. Why would he? She had been a 16-year-old girl then, all awkward angles and youth. Now she was a woman, and she had been careful not to give him her name. "Can I help you?" The words came out steadier than she felt. He nodded politely, touching the brim of his hat. "Yes, madam, I am looking for supplies. Just rode in, planning to stay a while. Need basic provisions, maybe some ammunition if you have it." His voice was the same, deep and a little rough. Fiona's hands trembled slightly as she set down the bolt of fabric she had been holding. Mrs. Chen emerged from the back room. "Welcome to Malad City. You have a name, stranger." "Quentin Ashford," he said. "Folks call me Quinn." "Mrs. Chen. This is Fiona Prescott, my assistant. We will get you fixed up. You planning to settle here or just passing through?" "Settling, if things work out," Quinn replied. "I heard there might be work for someone good with cattle. I have been foreman at a few ranches down in Nevada the past few years, but I am looking for something more permanent." Fiona forced herself to move, to act normal, to not stare at him like a ghost made flesh. She began gathering the supplies he requested, her mind racing. What were the chances? What impossible, astronomical chances that he would end up here, in this tiny town, in this store. "The Double R Ranch might be hiring," Mrs. Chen said. "They have been expanding their operation. Old man Reynolds is getting too stiff to handle everything himself, and his son is better at gambling than ranching." "I will ride out there tomorrow," Quinn said. "I appreciate the information." As Fiona rang up his purchases, their hands brushed briefly when he handed her the money. The contact sent a jolt through her, electric and undeniable. His eyes met hers, and for a moment she thought she saw a flicker of something, recognition or curiosity or interest. But then he smiled, polite and distant, and took his change. "Thank you, Miss Prescott." "You are welcome, Mr. Ashford." She watched him leave, her heart hammering so hard she thought Mrs. Chen must surely hear it. The older woman gave her a knowing look. "Handsome one, is he not?" "I did not notice," Fiona lied. Mrs. Chen laughed. "Right, and I am the Queen of England." That night, Fiona could not sleep. She lay in her small cabin, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she should tell him. But tell him what? That she was the girl who saved him 5 years ago. What purpose would that serve? He had clearly moved on with his life, and so had she. Dredging up the past would only complicate things. Besides, he had not recognized her. Maybe it was better that way. She saw him around town over the next few weeks. He got the job at the Double R Ranch as predicted, and quickly proved himself valuable. Word spread that he was good with horses. fair with men and sharp when it came to spotting cattle thieves. Sheriff Barker liked him, and Old Man Reynolds spoke of him with rare approval. Fiona told herself to keep her distance, but Malad City was too small for that. They crossed paths at church, at the general store, at the occasional town meeting. He was always polite, always respectful, but there was a wall there, a careful distance he maintained with everyone. She learned things about him through gossip and observation. He did not drink much, did not gamble, did not visit the working girls at the saloon. He had a small cabin on the Reynolds property and seemed content with solitude. Some said he was running from something, others that he was just naturally reserved. Nobody knew about Wyoming, about Harrison Porter, about the ambush that had nearly killed him. Nobody but Fiona. October came, bringing cooler temperatures and the kind of crystalline blue skies that made the mountains look close enough to touch. Fiona was closing up the store one evening when Quinn walked in, looking troubled. "I know it is late," he said, "but I need some medical supplies. One of the ranch hands got gored by a bull. Doc Patterson is 3 towns over delivering a baby, and the wound needs cleaning and bandaging now." Of course. Fiona immediately moved into action, gathering clean bandages, carbolic acid, needle, and thread for stitching. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough. Caught him in the thigh, bleeding pretty steady." Without thinking, Fiona grabbed her shawl. "I am coming with you." Quinn blinked in surprise. "Madam, that is not necessary. I just need the supplies." "Have you ever stitched a wound before, Mr. Ashford?" He hesitated. "Not on another person." "I have. We are wasting time. Let us go." She saw the moment he decided not to argue, the quick assessment and acceptance. They rode out to the Double R together, Fiona sitting behind him on his horse because it was faster than saddling another. She tried not to think about the solid warmth of his back, the way his muscles shifted as he guided the horse. The injured man, a young cowhand named Pete, was in rough shape when they arrived. The bull had caught him good, tearing through muscle and flesh. Fiona rolled up her sleeves and got to work, cleaning the wound with carbolic acid while Pete gritted his teeth and swore. "Hold him steady," she instructed Quinn, and he obeyed without question, gripping Pete's shoulders while she stitched. Her hands were sure and steady, just as they had been 5 years ago in that line shack. She could feel Quinn watching her, but she did not look up, focused entirely on her task. When she finished, she bandaged the wound carefully and sat back. "He will be fine as long as infection does not set in. Change the bandages daily, keep the wound clean, and make sure he stays off that leg for at least a week." Pete, pale and sweating but conscious, managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Miss Prescott. You got a gentle hand." "Rest now," she said softly. Outside, Quinn walked her to his horse. The night was cool and star-filled, the kind of night that made everything feel both vast and intimate at the same time. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "You did not even flinch." Fiona shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I have had practice. Growing up on a ranch, you learn to handle emergencies. Still, most women I know would have fainted at all that blood." "I am not most women, Mr. Ashford." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made her breath catch. "No, I am starting to realize that, Miss Prescott." The ride back to town was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Something had shifted between them, some wall beginning to crack. After that night, Quinn found reasons to come by the store more often. He needed new gloves. He wanted to send a letter east. He was looking for a book. Did they carry any? Fiona saw through every excuse, and she suspected he knew she did, but neither of them acknowledged it directly. They talked, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. He told her about Nevada, about working his way up from ranch hand to foreman, about his love for horses and the satisfaction of hard work. She told him about Wyoming, about losing her parents, about starting over in Idaho. She was careful not to mention the line shack, the stranger she had saved, but sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. November brought the first snow, dusting the valley in white. The town prepared for winter, stocking supplies and battening down for the cold months ahead. Fiona was splitting wood behind her cabin one afternoon when Quinn rode up. "That axe is almost as big as you are," he observed, dismounting. She wiped sweat from her forehead, a little embarrassed to be caught doing such unladylike work. "It gets the job done. May I?" He held out his hand for the axe, and she surrendered it. He made quick work of the remaining logs, his movements efficient and powerful. Fiona tried not to stare at the way his shoulders moved under his shirt, failed utterly when he finished. He stacked the wood neatly against the cabin wall. "You need more than this to get through winter. I will manage." "I am sure you will, but you do not have to manage alone." He met her eyes, and there was something vulnerable in his expression, something that made her heart ache. "I could bring by more wood, if you would not mind the company." It was the closest he had come to acknowledging that this was more than just neighborly concern. Fiona hesitated on the edge of something that felt both terrifying and inevitable. "I would not mind," she said softly. He smiled. "Good." He started coming by regularly after that. He brought wood, fixed a loose shutter on her cabin, helped her reinforce the chicken coop against predators. They talked while he worked, and Fiona learned more about the man behind the careful walls. He loved classical literature, surprising in a cowboy. He had a dry sense of humor that snuck up on her. He had been alone most of his life, and it had made him both strong and lonely. She wanted to tell him. Every time she saw him, the secret burned in her chest. But the moment never seemed right, and the longer she waited, the harder it became to find the words. December arrived, and with it came a fierce, cold snap. The town huddled together, people checking on neighbors, making sure everyone had enough firewood and food. Fiona caught a chill that settled in her chest, leaving her coughing and feverish. She tried to work through it, but Mrs. Chen sent her home with strict orders to rest. "You are no good to me sick," the older woman said firmly. "Go home, drink tea, sleep. I will manage." Fiona stumbled back to her cabin, shivering despite her heavy coat. She built up the fire, made tea, and collapsed into bed. The fever took her quickly, dragging her down into restless dreams where green eyes watched her from shadows and blood soaked into Wyoming dust. She woke to someone knocking on her door. Or maybe she was still dreaming. The knocking persisted, urgent and demanding. "Fiona, Fiona, open the door." Quinn's voice. She tried to get up, but her legs would not cooperate. The room spun sickeningly. She heard the door crash open, and then Quinn was there, his face tight with worry. "Christ, you are burning up." "I am fine," she mumbled, but even she did not believe it. He touched her forehead, and his hand felt blessedly cool. "You are not fine. When did this start? This morning? Maybe yesterday. I lose track." He muttered something under his breath that might have been a prayer or a curse, then scooped her up as if she weighed nothing. "I am taking you to the doctor." "Doc Patterson drinks," she protested weakly. "Not when I am standing over him, he will not." The next few hours were a blur. She remembered the doctor's house, remembered Quinn's voice cutting through the fog, remembered rough hands that smelled of whiskey examining her. Pneumonia, the doctor said. Bad, but not hopeless. She needed constant care, needed to be kept warm and hydrated. "I will take care of her," Quinn said, and there was steel in his voice. "You are not family," Doc Patterson pointed out. "I am what she has." Fiona wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he did not owe her anything, but she could not find the energy. She drifted in and out of consciousness, as Quinn carried her back to her cabin. He stoked the fire hot enough to bake bread, piled blankets on her, coaxed broth and water between her lips. For 3 days, he barely left her side. She was aware of him in fragments, his cool hand on her forehead, his voice reading to her from one of her books, his solid presence that somehow made the fever less frightening. When her lungs seized and she could not breathe, he propped her up and talked her through it, his voice calm and certain. "Breathe with me, Fiona, in and out. You are stronger than this. I have seen you stitch a man's leg without flinching. You faced down a bull gore like it was nothing. This is just a fever. You are going to beat it." On the 4th day, the fever broke. She woke weak and wrung out but clear-headed to find Quinn asleep in the chair beside her bed. He looked exhausted, his face shadowed with stubble, his clothes rumpled. He had given up work, given up everything to take care of her. Her heart swelled with an emotion so strong it frightened her. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes opened. When he saw she was awake and lucid, relief flooded his face. "You are back," he said quietly. "I am sorry," she whispered. "You should not have had to. Do not." He leaned forward, taking her hand in his. "Do not apologize for being sick. Do not apologize for needing help. I was terrified I was going to lose you." The raw honesty in his voice stunned her. "Quinn, I know this is not the right time. I know you are still weak and I should wait, but I have to say this." He took a shaky breath. "I think I am falling in love with you, Fiona Prescott. Maybe I have been since the first time I walked into that store and saw you. You are brave and strong and capable, and you do not need me for anything, which somehow makes me want to be there for you even more. If you do not feel the same way, I will understand, but I had to tell you, life is too short and too uncertain not to." Tears stung Fiona's eyes. "You are wrong about one thing." He went very still. "What is that?" "This is not the first time we met." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, 5 years of secrecy breaking like a dam. "It was autumn, 1878, outside Cheyenne. You were shot, left for dead. I found you, took you to an old line shack, patched you up. You were going to testify against Harrison Porter. I told you to go north, to live. I never told you my name." Quinn stared at her, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and dawning recognition. "The girl, that was you. I was 16. I thought you were going to die. I have never been so scared in my life." He stood abruptly, pacing the small cabin like a caged animal. "All this time, all these months, you knew who I was and you never said anything. I did not know if you would remember. I did not know if it mattered. If it mattered." He turned to face her, and his expression was intense. "You saved my life. I looked for you. After I healed, I went back to that line shack, tried to find any trace of who you were, but you had been so careful. No one in the area knew anything about a girl who helped a wounded stranger. I eventually had to give up, but I never forgot. I never forgot your voice, or the way you refused to leave me even when it was dangerous. You were the bravest person I had ever met." "I was terrified," Fiona admitted. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite it." He came back to the bed, kneeling beside it so they were eye level. "You gave me my life back. I went north like you said. I started over. Everything I have, everything I am, is because you gave me a chance to live. I could not just leave you there. Most people would have. You risked yourself for a stranger, and then you never asked for anything in return, never even told me who you were so I could thank you properly." His hand came up to cup her face, gentle and reverent. "You saved my life, Fiona Prescott, and now I am going to save yours." "What do you mean?" "I mean I am going to be here. I am going to make sure you rest and heal. I am going to chop your wood and tend your chickens and keep you safe. And when you are well, I am going to court you properly. I am going to take you on walks and buy you flowers and make you dinner. I am going to show you every single day that you are precious and valued and loved, because you saved me once, and I am going to spend the rest of my life returning the favor." "That is not necessary," she protested, but her voice was weak. "Yes, it is. Not because I owe you, but because I love you. I am hopelessly, completely in love with you. I think maybe I have been since that day in Wyoming. I just did not have a face to put to the feeling. Now I do. Now I have you, and I am not letting go." The tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. "I love you too. I have thought about you so many times over the years. I told myself I was being foolish, that you were just a stranger I helped once, but my heart would not listen." He kissed her then, soft and careful, mindful of her weakness but full of promise. It tasted like hope and second chances, and the kind of love that burned steady and true. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Get better. That is all I ask right now. Get better, and then we will figure out the rest together." Fiona's recovery was slow but steady. Quinn was true to his word, barely leaving her side. Mrs. Chen brought food and gossip, scolding Quinn for neglecting his work at the ranch but clearly approving of his devotion. Old man Reynolds sent word that Quinn's job would be waiting when he was ready, and to take all the time he needed. The town, being small and prone to gossip, had opinions about the situation. Some thought it improper for an unmarried man to care for an unmarried woman. Others thought it was romantic. A few pointed out that Fiona would have died without Quinn's help, which settled most arguments. By Christmas, Fiona was strong enough to sit outside on sunny days, wrapped in blankets while Quinn chopped wood or did small repairs around her property. They talked endlessly, filling in the gaps of the years apart. He told her about the long journey north after leaving the line shack, about the fear that Porter's men would find him, about eventually settling in Nevada, working hard to build a new identity and a new life. "I thought about going back," he admitted one afternoon, "testifying against Porter like I had planned. But you were right. Living mattered more than revenge. I heard years later that Porter got caught anyway, hung for murder when his own men turned on him." "Good," Fiona said with fierce satisfaction. "I kept looking for you, though. Every town I passed through, every ranch I worked. Part of me hoped I would see you again, even though I had no idea what you looked like. Just brown eyes and a voice like honey, that was all I had, and a memory of kindness when I needed it most. I tried to forget you," Fiona confessed. "But I could not. I dated other men, considered other proposals, but none of them made me feel the way you did. Even as a memory, you ruined me for anyone else." Quinn laughed. "We are quite the pair, are we not, haunted by ghosts of each other for 5 years. At least our ghosts turned out to be real." By January, Fiona was nearly back to full strength. Quinn had returned to work at the Double R but came by every evening, bringing dinner or just his company. They fell into an easy rhythm, comfortable and right. On a crisp February evening, Quinn arrived with a picnic basket and a mysterious smile. "It is winter," Fiona pointed out. "A bit cold for picnics, do you not think? I am taking you somewhere, trust me." They rode out of town, Fiona bundled in furs and seated in front of Quinn on his horse. He guided them to a small rise overlooking the valley, where someone had built a fire and laid out blankets. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and rose. "Quinn, this is beautiful. Not as beautiful as you." He helped her down, then led her to the blankets. The fire was warm, the view spectacular. He pulled out bread, cheese, dried meat, and a bottle of wine. They ate and talked as the stars emerged one by one. Fiona had never felt so content, so perfectly at peace. When they finished eating, Quinn shifted, suddenly nervous in a way she had never seen him. "I have something to say," he began. "You already told me you love me," she teased gently. I know, but I need to tell you again properly. He took her hands in his green eyes serious and full of emotion. Fiona Prescott, you saved my life when you had no reason to. You risked yourself for a stranger. You gave me a second chance when most people would have ridden past and not looked back. That says everything about who you are. You are brave and kind and selfless. You are strong enough to run a ranch alone but wise enough to accept help when you need it. You are stubborn and independent and absolutely fascinating. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. And I know we have not been courting long, at least not officially, but I have loved you for 5 years without knowing it. I do not want to waste any more time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple silver with a small stone that caught the firelight. This is not fancy. I am just a cowboy and I do not have much to offer except hard work and a full heart. But if you will have me, I swear I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy. Will you marry me, Fiona? Joy bubbled up in her chest, bright and overwhelming. Yes, yes, of course yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, deep and thorough, a promise of all the years to come. They were married in April, when the valley was green and bursting with spring flowers. It was a small ceremony in the church with Mrs. Chen and the Reynolds family as witnesses. Fiona wore a simple cream dress, and Quinn wore his best suit, his dark hair slicked back and his eyes shining with happiness. When the preacher said they could kiss, Quinn dipped her dramatically, making her laugh against his mouth. The small gathering applauded, and Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "About time," she muttered. "You two have been moon-eyed for months." They had a modest reception at the hotel, with food and music and dancing. Old man Reynolds gave a toast about finding good people to share life with, and several of the ranch hands gave rowdy cheers. Fiona danced with Quinn until her feet hurt, wrapped in his arms and feeling like she was floating. As the evening wound down, they walked back to Fiona's cabin, which would now be their home until they could build something larger. The night was cool and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. "Are you happy?" Quinn asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Fiona replied honestly. "Who would have thought that saving a stranger's life would lead to this? I would say it was fate, but I do not believe in such things." "What do you believe in?" He stopped walking, turning to face her in the starlight. "I believe in courage. I believe in kindness. I believe that sometimes the smallest choices have the biggest consequences. And I believe that I am the luckiest man alive to have you as my wife. Quinn Ashford, you are a romantic. Only for you." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, an exploration and a promise. Fiona had been nervous, but Quinn was patient, worshipful, treating her like something precious. When he held her afterward, both of them wrapped in quilts and contentment, she felt complete in a way she had never experienced before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too." Always. Life settled into a new rhythm. Quinn continued working at the Double R, and Fiona kept her position at the general store, though Mrs. Chen gave her more flexible hours now that she was married. They talked about their future, about dreams and plans. "I want to have our own ranch someday," Quinn said one evening over dinner. "Nothing huge, just enough to be independent, raise cattle, maybe some horses." "I would like that," Fiona agreed. "And children, I want children," he smiled. "How many? As many as God sees fit to give us. I grew up alone after my parents died. I want a full house, laughter and noise and chaos. Then that is what we will have." They saved money carefully, Quinn working extra hours and Fiona taking in sewing on the side. By their first anniversary, they had enough to buy a plot of land just outside town, good grazing land with a creek running through it. They spent weekends building a small house. Quinn doing most of the heavy work while Fiona helped where she could. The house was finished by autumn, just a simple two-room cabin with a loft, but it was theirs. They moved in on a golden October day, carrying their few possessions and planting a tree in the front yard to mark the occasion. "Someday this will be big enough to shade the whole house," Quinn said, patting the small sapling. "Someday we will be old and gray, sitting under it and watching our grandchildren play," Fiona replied. "I like the sound of that." That winter, Fiona discovered she was pregnant. The joy on Quinn's face when she told him was worth every moment of morning sickness. He became almost comically protective, worrying over every little thing until Fiona had to scold him. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him. "I am not made of glass." "I know, but you are precious to me if anything happened to you." She took his face in her hands. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I am strong, remember, you said so yourself." You are the strongest person I know." Their son was born on a warm June evening in 1886, after a labor that was mercifully short for a first baby. Quinn paced outside like a caged animal until Doc Patterson, considerably more sober these days, emerged with a smile. "You have a healthy boy, and your wife is doing fine." Quinn burst into the room to find Fiona propped up in bed, tired but glowing, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up at him with tired eyes and a radiant smile. "Come meet your son." He approached reverently, looking down at the small red face peeking out from the blankets. The baby was perfect, with a dusting of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. "He is so small," Quinn whispered, awed. "He will grow." "Here." She shifted the bundle into his arms, and Quinn held his son for the first time. The baby settled immediately, as if recognizing his father's heartbeat. "What should we name him?" Fiona asked. They had discussed names for months but never quite settled on one. Now, holding his son, Quinn knew exactly what felt right. "Samuel, after my father, Samuel Ashford." "Samuel," Fiona repeated, testing it. "Yes, that is perfect." Samuel was a good baby, healthy and happy. He had his father's green eyes and his mother's smile, and he was thoroughly spoiled by everyone in town. Mrs. Chen knitted him blankets and clothes. Old man Reynolds carved him a wooden horse. Even Doc Patterson stopped by with a silver spoon, claiming it was for luck. Quinn was a devoted father, coming home from work to hold his son and tell him stories. Fiona would watch them together, her heart so full it ached. This was everything she had dreamed of and more. As Samuel grew, so did their ranch. Quinn worked hard, building the herd slowly but surely. He had a good eye for cattle and a better one for horses. Within a few years, the Ashford Ranch had a solid reputation. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. In 1888, Fiona gave birth to their daughter, Emma. She had honey-colored hair like her mother and her father's stubborn determination. 2 years later came another son, Matthew, who was quiet and thoughtful from the start. And in 1892, their youngest daughter, Rose, arrived with a lusty cry that announced she would not be ignored. The cabin had long since been expanded, growing to accommodate their expanding family. There was chaos and noise and laughter, just as Fiona had wanted. Toys littered the floor, children's voices filled the air, and life was messy and wonderful. Quinn would sometimes stop in the middle of his work, watching Fiona with their children, and marvel at how lucky he was. From a man left for dead on a Wyoming trail to this, a ranch and a family and a woman who loved him. It seemed impossible, like a dream he might wake from, but it was real. Every morning he woke beside Fiona. Every evening he came home to his children's excited greetings. Every night he thanked God for the girl who had been brave enough to save a dying stranger. The years passed in a blur of seasons and milestones. Samuel grew tall and strong, learning to rope and ride almost before he could walk properly. Emma was fearless, climbing trees and racing her brothers. Matthew had a gift with animals, able to calm the most skittish horse. Rose was the baby, doted on by everyone and learning early how to get her way. Fiona and Quinn's love only deepened with time. They still found moments for each other amidst the chaos of raising 4 children and running a ranch. Quiet mornings before the children woke, stolen kisses in the barn, nights when they lay in bed and talked about everything and nothing. "Do you ever regret it?" Quinn asked one night when the children were finally asleep and they had a rare moment of peace. "Regret what? Saving me. If you had just ridden past that day, your life would have been simpler. Easier, maybe." Fiona propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him in the dim lamplight. "Simpler, perhaps, but not better. Never better. That day changed everything, Quinn. It brought me here to this life, to you, to our children. I would not trade any of it for anything. Even when Samuel broke your good china, or when Emma let the chickens loose in the house, or when Matthew and Rose decided to make mud pies in the kitchen," she laughed. "Even then. This is life, Quinn. Real, messy, beautiful life, and I am living it with you, which makes it perfect." He pulled her down for a kiss, still marveling after all these years at how perfectly they fit together. "I love you, Fiona Ashford. I love you too." In 1895, when Samuel was 9 and starting to take a real interest in ranching, Quinn sat him down for a talk. "There is something I want to tell you," Quinn began. "A story about how your mother and I met." Samuel, all ears for any story about his parents, leaned forward eagerly. Quinn told him everything. About Harrison Porter and the ambush, about waking up in a lined shack with a young girl tending his wounds, about the second chance she had given him, about finding her again years later in Malad City and realizing the stranger who saved him was the woman he loved. "Your mother is the bravest person I have ever known," Quinn finished. "She risked everything for someone she did not know. That is the kind of person she is. That is the kind of person I hope you will grow up to be." Samuel's eyes were wide. "Ma saved your life, she did. And because of that, you and your sisters exist. Never forget that kindness matters, Samuel. One act of courage can change everything." Over the years, Quinn told the same story to each of their children when he felt they were old enough to understand. It became a family legend, the story of how their parents met, a tale of courage and second chances and love that overcame impossible odds. The children grew. Samuel took over more and more of the ranch work, showing a natural aptitude for management. Emma married a young rancher from the next county, someone as adventurous as she was. Matthew became a veterinarian, his gentle way with animals serving him well. Rose was the last to leave, heading to Boys to become a teacher. Suddenly, the house was quiet again. Just Quinn and Fiona, their hair now streaked with silver, their faces lined with years of laughter and work. "It is strange," Fiona said one evening, sitting on the porch and watching the sunset. "I spent so many years wanting a full house, and now I miss the noise." "They will visit," Quinn assured her, taking her hand. "And someday there will be grandchildren to spoil." He was right. Emma's first baby arrived in 1903, a boy named after Quinn. Samuel married in 1904 and gave them twin granddaughters the following year. Matthew and his wife added 3 more grandchildren to the growing brood, and Rose eventually married and had 2 daughters of her own. The Ashford Ranch became a gathering place for the whole family, especially during holidays. The house Quinn had built and expanded over the years was filled again with children's laughter, though now it was the next generation. Quinn and Fiona would sit on the porch, watching their children and grandchildren, and marvel at how full their lives had become. "Do you remember that day in Wyoming?" Fiona asked on one such occasion. It was their 30th wedding anniversary, and the whole family had gathered to celebrate. "Every detail," Quinn replied. "I remember thinking I was going to die. I remember opening my eyes and seeing an angel leaning over me. I remember your voice, so calm and certain, telling me I was going to be all right. I had no idea if you would be all right. I was terrified. But you did not let me see that. You were exactly what I needed." He squeezed her hand gently. "You have been exactly what I needed every day since." "We saved each other," Fiona said softly. "You think I saved your life that day, but you saved mine too. You gave me purpose, family, love. You made me whole." Inside the house, someone started playing the piano and their grandchildren began to sing. Quinn stood, offering his hand to Fiona. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Ashford?" She took his hand with a smile. "Always, Mr. Ashford." They danced on the porch, moving slowly to the music drifting from inside. Their children watched from the windows, smiling at the sight of their parents, still so clearly in love after all these years. The years continued to pass. Quinn's hair went completely white, and Fiona developed arthritis in her hands that made sewing difficult. But they were healthy and happy, surrounded by family and the land they had built together. On a warm spring evening in 1920, they sat together under the tree they had planted so long ago. It was huge now, its branches providing deep shade, just as Quinn had predicted. Their great-grandchildren played in the yard, the latest generation of Ashfords. "We built something good here," Quinn said, looking around at the ranch, the house, the family. "We did," Fiona agreed. "All from one moment of choice. One decision to stop and help instead of riding past. Best decision you ever made," she smiled. "Second best. The best was saying yes when you asked me to marry you," Quinn laughed, the sound still rich and warm despite his age. "I think I am the one who got the better end of that deal. We both got exactly what we needed." As the sun set and the fireflies began to emerge, Quinn wrapped his arm around Fiona's shoulders, pulling her close. She leaned into him, fitting against his side like she had for over 40 years. Their oldest grandson approached, a young man now with a family of his own. "Grandfather, grandmother, we are about to start supper. Are you coming in?" "In a moment," Quinn said. "We are just enjoying the evening." The young man smiled and went back inside. Quinn and Fiona sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. "I would do it all again," Fiona said quietly. "Every moment, every choice, every hardship and joy, all of it just to end up here with you." "As would I." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "You saved my life, Fiona Prescott Ashford, and in return I tried to save yours. I think we did all right. Better than all right. We built a life worth saving." They sat together under their tree, surrounded by the evidence of their love, the ranch and the family and the legacy they would leave behind. From a dusty trail in Wyoming to this moment, from a desperate act of kindness to a lifetime of devotion, their story had come full circle. And as the stars wheeled overhead and their family gathered inside the house that love built, Quinn and Fiona held each other close and knew that they had found something most people only dream of. They had found home, found purpose, found a love that had not only survived but thrived against all odds. The cowboy who had been left for dead and the girl who refused to let him die had created something beautiful together. And that, they both knew, was the greatest salvation of all. Inside, someone called for them again, and this time they stood, hand in hand, and walked toward the warm light and laughter of their family. Their story was not ending. It was living on in every child and grandchild and great-grandchild, in every act of kindness and courage, in every choice to help rather than to walk away. Fiona had saved Quinn's life on a dusty Wyoming trail in 1878. Quinn had spent the rest of his life saving hers in return, over and over, with every act of love and devotion. And together, they had built something that would outlast them both, a legacy of love that would echo through generations. As they stepped through the door into the warm embrace of their family, Quinn whispered one last time, "Thank you for saving me." Fiona smiled up at him, her eyes still bright despite her age. "Thank you for saving me right back." And that truly was the end and the beginning, the story of two souls who found each other against impossible odds and chose, every single day, to save each other in all the ways that mattered most.